All right, hey guys, this is a little video to help you with the week 3 stuff. And I probably should have mentioned this before, but my plan is basically to make you at least one video every week to kind of help you know what to look for when you're reading and give you some helpful hints for the exercises and reflection pieces and things. So before I start too, I thought I'd tell you one little thing about the class that I kind of wish I had told you from the start, but really this is the first week you're really going to talk to each other on the discussion forum, so this is probably good enough. But just as far as background for the class, this class was designed originally because EMCC developed some kind of a relationship with the Appalachian Mountain Club. And the Appalachian Mountain Club, that's why you see the AMC logo there. The AMC, if you're not familiar with them, maintains some of the trails and a system of huts, and they do guided trips and things like that along the Appalachian Trail in the Northeast, basically from New Jersey to Maine, I think. So the AMC is paying for some of their employees to get a degree through EMCC. So this course was designed with them in mind. And I originally agreed to teach it and was told I would probably have a handful of AMC students. But that would have been a pretty small class. So we opened it up to the larger college community. And I ended up getting, I think, about 14 other EMCC students taking this as an elective. So we ended up having a class of like 20. I think I have 6 AMC and 14 regular EMCC students. So I'm really excited about that, and I hope as we kind of read each other's writing and stuff like that, I'm looking forward to hearing what those AMC folks have, and I've designed some of the exercises and things so that they get a chance to tell us what's going on in the places they work. So I hope you will all kind of benefit from each other. Anyway, another onto the real subject of the video. So your reading for this week is Aldo Leopold, and it's part of the Sand County Almanac, mostly the section called the Land Ethic. That's kind of what he's best known for. And I've said this before, but I want to ask you to kind of sit back and enjoy the writing. Leopold, I think, is a fabulous writer. He's one of my favorite writers ever. I've reread this book a couple times since I agreed to take this class and just really, really enjoy it. He's great. It was written in 1949, so it seems pretty old. That's 70 years ago now, but it just amazes me the more I go through it, how timely almost everything he says is. It still seems totally 100% relevant today. So there's a picture of Leopold sitting back. My advice to you is sit back and enjoy the reading if you haven't already done it. So, oops. There we go. Here's another thing I probably should have mentioned before now, but you know, this is the first time I've taught this class, so I'm sort of figuring it out as I go along too. But if I had to say there's one unifying theme of this course, it's really this dichotomy, this set of questions. There are kind of two ways of looking at the world, I think. There's a group of people that feel like we are stewards of the earth, and that's based on the idea that humans are superior, we're the superior beings on this planet, and therefore we have a responsibility to take care of the earth. But it's really still an anthropocentric view. It's humans are superior, and therefore the way that we take care of the earth, and the reason that we take care of the earth, is to benefit mankind, to benefit humans. So, you know, that's very much the basis of that conservation school of thought, the Gifford Pinchot utilitarian model. I've said this in another video, and you've read it. This is kind of, I think, what has been taught by the Judeo-Christian tradition. Hopefully you've seen my video on the history of wilderness thought where it kind of talks about that. But that's one viewpoint, is that humans are stewards of the earth. Another way of looking at things is that we are just members of the biotic community, just one species among many, and maybe not that special. So that kind of leads to more of a biocentric or ecocentric view, and hopefully you've picked up these terms along the way. Biocentric means life-centered. It's based on the idea that all living creatures matter and they all have an inherent right to live. Ecocentric is earth-centered, and it's based on kind of more the interdependencies and the intricate relationships among ecosystems, and the idea that it's all related and we need to respect kind of ecosystems as a whole. So that school of thought is kind of the basis for the preservation viewpoint, the John Muir kind of folks. And I would say that's consistent with the land ethic that you're reading about this week, and deep ecology and some of those other viewpoints that you read, I think, last week in the Knowles book. So anyway, that dichotomy there, are we stewards of the earth or members of the biotic community? That's going to come up again and again in this course, including in your assignments this week. So before I start, I showed you a picture there. I mean, that's my copy of Sand County Almanac. So if you bought your book through the bookstore, that should be the copy that you have. That's the one that I have. If you ordered it online, there are many different versions of this book available, and any of them should be fine. But when I give you page number references like I do on these slides, just understand that your pages might be different if you have a different version of the book. And just for reference, the section that we're reading in my book starts on page 237. So if you see like a reference to page 239, that's just 2 or 3 pages in. So if that helps, good. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about the land ethic. The story starts, or the section starts, with Leopold talking about Odysseus and his hanging of 12 slave girls when he returned from fighting in the war. And the important point there is not that Odysseus was a bad guy. He's kind of thought of as a hero. But the point is that at that time in history, slaves were property. They were literally nothing more than property. And so the idea of killing a slave was no more ethically bad than crumpling up a piece of paper and throwing it in the trash can. You know, it's just disposing of a piece of property. So the story of human history really since then is the extension of rights to more and more groups. You know, we began to include slaves and care about them, and free slaves finally. We started, you know, if you think about the path in American history, we started to extend rights to women, to minorities, to gays, and to the whole LGBTQ crowd. So, you know, the story of human history up to this point has been sort of this widening of that ethical circle of concern. And I teach just a plain old ethics class, and one of the things that I teach is ethically we should have what I call a universal point of view, which is the idea that all people on the planet matter equally. They should be viewed as equals. So what Leopold is saying is that we continue the broadening of that circle beyond people and to include the land as a whole, to literally think of the land as part of our community. So he says on page 238, there's no ethic dealing with man's relation to the land or animals or plants. And that was true when he wrote it. I love the third bullet point there is kind of the classic, well-known definition of the land ethic. The land ethic simply enlarges the boundaries of the community to include the soils, waters, plants, and animals, or collectively the land. So that's, you know, conceptually what the land ethic is. How you put that into practice is a little trickier, but that's the big idea. As far as ethics, you know, an ethic, he says, ecologically is a limitation on freedom of action. So that's a pretty powerful statement there. You know, it's the recognition that just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. We have to take back and say, okay, even if, you know, if we could develop here, is it the right thing to do? Sometimes we have to stop and not do something. That's what ethics means. A lot of times is not doing something. On page 240, he says and this goes right back to that dichotomy I talked about earlier. A land ethic changes the role of Homo sapiens from conqueror of the land community to plain member and citizen of it. So that's, you know, he's trying to shift us over to that view that we are just one species among many. That was a pretty radical notion back in 1949. It's still pretty radical. But just to give you some background, you know, there was a pretty famous Supreme Court case in 1972 involving the Sierra Club, and they were trying to prevent a dam. They eventually lost, and the dam was built. But their argument was that nature should have legal standing, and there was some legal justification for protecting nature. They lost, but Justice William O. Douglas, who I think is a great American hero, wrote a pretty famous dissent in which he described some pretty good reasons for giving actual legal standing to nature. And so there, you know, since then there's been a whole animal rights movement, a pretty famous book recently, or pretty well known, I guess, recently on the rights of nature. So this stuff is coming along now. He talks a bit on page 241 about the ecological interpretation of history. I'll let you read that, but I just wanted to point out that there is a whole subdiscipline now called environmental history. So we're starting to kind of do the kind of thing that he recommends in there. All right, I have to pause this for now. Part 2 is coming.